This is Ms. Cooper, and today I'm going to show you how to use some of those basic editing skills to create some kind of mood and crop your photo properly. So I'm going to show you two photos. The first is the unedited version of a portrait I did through a window that had some water on it to kind of show how we felt in quarantine. So this is the original photo. This is the edited version. So what you'll notice between the two of these is that the edited one is much cooler in temperature. This one still has a lot of the warm light that you can see coming from the other side of the photo. And even if I did kind of crop that part out, you can see that this looks much warmer than something like this. I created a bit of a mood. Now what you'll see is I cropped out some things too. I didn't want the light from the dining area or that blown out white area on the back door. And I wanted a bullseye composition, which would put his face right in the middle. So what I did was cropped it in, and now we are less distracted by the other parts of the photo, and we can just see his face and kind of wonder what expression he has, because it's a little hard to see through the glass. It's really interesting that way. So what I'm going to show you is how I would edit that up in Photoshop Fix for the iPad, because we're on the go here. Now, the original photo I actually edited in Snapseed instead for my phone. So this will look a little bit different when I'm finished because the tools work a little bit differently, but they all have the same things. But if you have Snapseed, that is a good app to play with. So let's talk about cropping here. For me, to get this into a bullseye, I started by just making this a square. And the nice thing about it using the grid is really for rule of thirds, right? But it can help me find the exact center of the photo a lot more easily. So I'm gonna try to keep his face in the middle, but try to get rid of that blown out white part because I'm not so into that. There's gonna be a little bit of that. I think I'm gonna live with that for now. So I'll leave the cropping at that. So now let's go to the adjust section. I kind of just like to work left to right. They have them in there that way for a reason. I think my exposure is pretty all right. I don't really need it to be more or less exposed. I just want it to be where it was originally. But what I would like to do is boost that contrast just a little bit. If I boost it too much, it starts to look like it's been messed with too much. So I'm gonna boost it enough to make these raindrops stand out, but not too much. And what I'm gonna do with the warmth is I'm definitely going to change that, because I want this photo to look a little more like sad, and this does not look this way. This looks like, golden sunny afternoon, maybe there was a thunderstorm, but the sun's coming out. I want it to look more like, oh, I've been sitting inside all day, and it's still gonna rain all day. If I push it too far, that starts to get, it's a little artsy, and it's cool, and it's not like wrong, but it's not really what I'm looking for this project. I wanna create that mood without going too far overboard, so I think I'm going to leave it right about here is still good. This is pretty cool colored, especially because we're thinking of the old photo and what it did look like. But I know it's different. But if you just look at it by itself as a photo, if you were to walk up to this photo hanging on a wall, this would look all right. Let's go to saturation. If you boost it, it looks a little intense. It gets very pink, which would be okay in some photos. I'm actually going to saturate it just a little bit less. Tone it down, make it a little less colorful and exciting, but only by a little bit. What the shadows and highlights do is it basically either lessens the shadows and makes it more gray, or it makes the shadows a little more intense. That's basically what this does. And highlights, same thing, boosts them or lowers them just a little bit. I'd like to boost them just a little bit to make those raindrops stand out. So if I were to press and hold on this photo, it doesn't actually change. I know a lot of apps do that. So that's just something I'll kind of point out as I go. Make sure you're just looking at this as its own standalone photo and thinking about whether you like it that way. Liquify is something we really don't need to get into. This is where you kind of just push and pull different parts of your photo. It's fun to play with. We don't really need that for now. We don't really need healing either. We actually can't see much of anything to heal, but if there was part of the face that had a pimple on it and your person who you took a photo of didn't like that, you could do that if you wanted to, or if there's something distracting in the background that you didn't want there, you could also do that. So for example, if I just wanted to kind of get rid of that area there, I could, and it replaces it with another green area. And it did it so smoothly that you can't really notice, but if you were to zoom in, you would notice that there are two raindrops that look very similar. I'm going to keep that though. I think that made that area a little less distracting. There is a smooth tool in case you need to smooth anything out. I'm going to skip over that. Light, this is what I am going to get into. I like using these brushes to selectively lighten or darken some areas of the photo. Now, if you press and hold on the size, you can move up and down and change your brush size. Hardness, I'm going to make really soft, and opacity, I don't want this to be too intense. I don't want it to be super noticeable. If I were to turn up the opacity and lighten an area, you're going to see a brush stroke, and I don't want that to be seen. I just want it to be slightly there. So if I wanted to make his face pop out just a little bit more, I could kind of lighten some areas of it and make it stand out if I wanted to. So that's something I could try. You can also darken some areas as well if you are looking at part of your photo and it's just too intense. Now, if I try to darken this blown out area, it's not gonna do a whole lot, but I could darken some of the areas around his face to make his face stand out just a little bit more. The nice thing is I can always keep darkening it if I want to. It's not like you have to get it all in one go. I could darken some areas. I might actually darken his eye just a little bit to make it stand out just a little bit more. These are some just portrait tips you can do. You can darken or lighten stuff just to make it stand out just a little bit more too. If I were to go back and lighten his cheek just a little bit more, that will make that part of his face stand out and maybe even look a little more ghostly through the glass if that was something you were looking to do. I'm going to leave it at that. Color. Again, this is where you can push and pull those colors very similarly to lightening and darkening it. I'll boost the opacity here. If I wanted to saturate this more, you would absolutely see there's a bit more color right there specifically. So I'm going to get rid of that though. I don't think I really need to desaturate anything. I will saturate it just a little bit more where it's blue at the bottom here. I think that blue light is really interesting. And I think I'll saturate just a little bit more, kind of like right around his face. I want his face to not be too saturated because I kind of like that his skin looks a little more like ghostly inside. And I'll just kind of boost some of the blue that's in the raindrops. I think that's pretty interesting. All right. So with that, that's pretty much all of the tools you really need to use for here. There are other things you can do where you can paint over it. That doesn't really make sense for this project or for what we're doing. That's mostly if there's something really big or really weird that you had to edit out of the photo, or if you'd put a bunch of photos together. There's a thing where you can blur parts of the photo if, it even gives the example, like the background of a portrait. But for me, it's actually really important that these raindrops are here, so I don't want to blur that. However, if you wanted to blur some areas like the background, you could, if you were very focused on somebody's face, you could start adding those blurring effects. And it's very subtle at first until you add more. You can see how it's kind of stacked up. But if I were to just blur right here, you can see that it's very subtle. I don't want to do any blurring at all, though. I like this the way it is. There is a vignette area as well. I don't really choose to do this that much. Basically what it does is it makes it a bit darker at the corners. So this is something you can play with though, if that helps you with your mood. So you can mess with the circles, and this is kind of like about how long it takes for it to transition to those darker corners. So that's kind of up to you, how you'd like to do that. For me, what you'll notice if I do that is it puts this weird coloring at that blown out corner, and I think kind of draws some attention to it. I'll leave it for now though and see how it looks, because you can always do more than one version of this and see if you're happy with it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and save that to my camera roll. Anyway, that is just an example of how you can edit up your photos. So really think about your mood. If you need to mess with the color and the temperature, those are the #1 things I would recommend, along with lighting, just to sharpen it up, make it look a little more interesting to look at. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see what you do.